Hi, Pat.
Sorry, we hit the button twice. I got to get the engineer to come in and take a look at it. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. No problem at all. I know what that's all about.
Well, thanks for coming back on. I know we had you on. It was about a year ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I saw that email and I just shot another email to you. I think it was June of last year, or maybe June when we were talking. Maybe it was July when I was on. And I've been on K-Talk 3 or 4 times before that with the previous show that was in this slot, and even one wintry, stormy night I actually had to host because nobody could make it to the station. There was a blizzard going on up there, and they called me and asked me if I could host the show. So I did that for a little while until somebody made it in on a snowmobile or some sort.
Well, it's an honor to have you back on again, and I'm glad that I think when you were here the last time you came, I think it was a Friday night on the late show, but now for the Saturday night audience and for those that have not heard about you, Alex, why don't you go ahead and give us and the listeners a little bit of the backstory? How did you get all this stuff with cryptozoology?
I just been always into it. As young as I can remember, I've been inquisitive and wanting to know more. But I think the actual event was I was on a hunting trip up in New Hampshire when I was 12 or so with my dad, and we had some dogs follow us into the woods, and that's a no-no during deer season. So after a couple of 2 or 3 miles in, my dad kind of bitching, excuse my language, at me from the dogs following us. I took the dogs and headed back to the forest road, and something followed us. After a little bit of a while, something was following me. The dogs noticed it. I noticed it. One thing led to another, and it eventually chased me out of the woods. And we got back to our dinner, kind of like a diner, and the people that owned the diner, we were at their house. They had talked us into, it was our 3rd day of hunting. They had talked us into, going to their house, parking out front, and, hunting the mountain that they lived on. And it was their dogs that were following me. And one of them they later gave to me, and I had for 20 years, close to it. It was 18 years. And we told them what happened, and they said, "Oh, that's just Big Ben. Everybody around here knows Big Ben." And, more or less they explained to us it was the Bigfoot creature that lived up there. And, whether it was one or more than one, who knows? But they said, he was just following you out of the woods to make sure you make it out of the woods. He's never been known to hurt anybody. And that quite possibly could be the case because I never really felt threatened, although, I could kind of hear it paralleling me. And I'm trying to make this story short because I think
No, you're fine.
Last year. But I could hear him paralleling me. I did a couple of those stop and go things, and you'd hear him crunch the trees, where he was walking or she. And it was a scary event, but in the end, it just started me off on a journey. So I guess it was a good thing.
And you were hooked ever since.
Oh yeah, anything mysterious. I'd like to say I'm a cryptozoologist, but I think I've even branched out beyond that now into the paranormal. UFOs. Mm-hmm. I've even living here in Arizona, we have lots of ghost towns and old towns. So I've done a few ghost hunts and even a few ghost events where we've had people come with us down in Bisbee and Tombstone. I've done a little bit of everything, but I've had the most success in cryptozoology, seeing strange animals, investigating strange animals.
Sure.
I've had a lot a lot of success in the UFO field too. I've seen a bunch of UFOs and possibly even filmed one a couple of years back with my buddy Mitch Wade. We were coming home from a Bigfoot trip, and we saw something go from mountain peak to mountain peak, look like a silver disc. So we were already kind of in the mode of, gee, that was strange. What was that? Looking in the sky. We got down around the bend on Route 60, right about Queen Valley, heading west back towards Phoenix from Superior. And we saw a plume come up from the desert. And my buddy Mitch is a former Air Force major. And I said, gee, that don't look like no dust devil. And he said, that's a missile launch. And just so happens that there was a turnout on Route 60 right at that spot. Used to be a road into an industrial complex that was blocked off. And somebody calling me, we'll just shut them right off. And we pulled into that turnout. We both started filming the missile launch. And, by this time you could see the missile. At first it was just a bunch of dust coming up from the desert. Mm-hmm. But at this time you could see the missile. It went up from, 2 or 3 miles to our left and arced over us. And it was a huge craft. Mitch said it looked like something that was designed to go in and out of the atmosphere. And that's specifically what he dealt with in the Air Force, so I'm pretty sure he's right on. And we were filming it. We're both narrating as we go. And you can hear each other on each other's video.
Right.
And at about, and I'm guessing now, at about the 40-second mark, you can see what looks like the silver disc that we saw prior cross the path of the missile launch. And it was unusual, to say the least. So we stood there in awe for a little while. We got home. We got some contacts at the various TV stations in Phoenix, because we've been on just about every one of them. And we called the one that's, our closest friends, and that's KPHO CBS 5. And, of course, they sent their top reporter right out and did an interview with us. They confirmed the missile launch with the National Guard that owns the property. And, that really led us on a little quest. Okay, if it was an official missile launch, then all the airports around Phoenix, there's 3 of them on this eastern side of the valley, counting Sky Harbor, would have been shut down. The military would have shut down the airspace. So, I'm not going to guess on how long, but first shot.
Right.
So what was this that flew across the missile's path? That was pretty unique and went a little viral. Been on a bunch of shows because of that. Maybe do a little shout out right now, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Whitley Strieber had me on Unknown Country Dreamland a couple of times over that, and I was on the Kevin Smith show over that one too. Kevin just passed away a year and a half ago, so rest in peace, Kevin. And Whitley's wife, Ann, is very, very sick, so send our prayers out to Ann at the same time. But, I went on some of the bigger shows, talked about that. Whitley, the night after he had me on, was the host on Coast. And he talked about my video on Coast. Shortly thereafter, Coast had me on. So it was a pretty exciting time. We still don't know what that was. There was a couple of different wildfires that we think, or at least I think, was caused by stages of that rocket falling off. There was a wildfire pretty much right behind us, just west of Superior, Arizona, on the Route 60. There was another wildfire in the White Mountain Apache Reservation up near White River. I got a bunch of friends in White River that I do Bigfoot research with, game and fish up there, the White River Apache game and fish. And they had a fire in the White Mountains near White River, and it seemed to be on a direct vector that this missile was traveling, and it was heading right towards White Sands. So that was really unique, and that was something totally, different. And we just lucked out and got it, did some research on it. We found what probably is the launch site. We think they're building, it looks like, maybe missile silos out there, or a whole base of some sort underground. Every time we go to the area we call the Hut Zone, we watch trucks going in and out of that desert, and there's nothing there, but these trucks are going in and out, gigantic construction trucks. And so, it could be that we have something similar to an Area 51 right here in the East Valley, just to the east of where the population center stops.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
Well, and being that the line of with you doing the research with the cryptozoology research, I tend to believe, Alex, you're out at night quite a bit, quite often, and if Bigfoot's quiet, well, you can keep your eyes in the sky.
Yeah, we do, a little bit of everything, and we have had numerous occasions in the Sierra Anchas where we probably do most of our research of, catching lights in the sky, both coming and going, to that location while we are there. We've talked to other people while we're there because we'll feel them out. We'll talk to the other people there. If they seem like they're not going to be belligerent or hostile towards what we do, we tell them what we're doing. And many, many times, they don't always say, "Oh, we saw Bigfoot yesterday." They say, "Gee, we saw some strange lights up in the sky just the other night," or we heard some strange noises in the sky. So it's kind of pushed us to that direction a little bit, not by choice. And this area, as the crow flies, is probably only 40, 45 miles from where Travis Walton was abducted. And I've spoke to Travis about the ordeal and the crafts that we saw. One craft I saw, this was a very big one, was actually closer to the valley here. I won't go into everything, but it came towards us, and as it came towards us, it was coming down. When it got right above us, it took a 90-degree turn, and almost like they knew that we were watching, and by this time we had a whole crowd of people. They started to elevate again and take off, and after a few seconds, it did like the Star Trek, zoop, gone, But it only went 30, 40 miles from where we were to South Mount, and kind of directly to where the Phoenix Lights, I guess, were mostly filmed when they hit Phoenix proper. Not saying it had anything to do with that, but it quite possibly could. But it did the Star Trek from where we were and stopped over by South Mountain. And then after a few seconds, it zipped off over South Mountain. But when it first started, when it first started to elevate again after its 90-degree turn, it wobbled. And I could tell that the craft, it was doing that stealth kind of shielding that you care of. We could see the two lights on the corners and on the front, but you couldn't really make out whether it was blocking out the sky or not. And I believe what it was doing was kind of that stealthy thing like the Predator in the movie. I think it was projecting the sky above it to its body below. And the only way you could really tell that these lights were connected is when they wobbled. And they wobbled in unison before it kind of powered up and zoomed off. And when I was talking to Travis Walton, he stopped me right there and said, when the craft put me down on the road, because I kind of awoke blurry, and the first thing I noticed was the craft above me, and it took off. He says it wobbled.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, that's pretty unique. And, that's just one of the times that we've kind of gone into the other field a little bit.
Let me ask you, Alex, we had Dr. Lynn Katai on last year, and, of course, she was telling us about kind of her whole involvement with the Phoenix Lights and, again, her being a prominent doctor in the community. Thought, people, people need to, the word needs to get out, and she's done so much for the Phoenix Lights incident. But she was mentioning to me, and maybe you know of this area, she was saying that directly, I'm going to say it's south of her home, there's a canyon area that she kind of feels is almost like another Skinwalker Ranch like we have here in Utah, where she sees orbs, different things coming out of it. Are you familiar with that area at all?
Kind of place where it could be. Where does she live? Do you remember?
She's in Phoenix. I honestly don't know. I'd have to go back and listen to the audio again. But she said there's a lot of these canyon areas there out that way that there seems to be a lot of orb activity.
I think she means down in the, of course, South Mountain, the whole range, the Australia, excuse me, have canyons going right through them. And then the mountain range directly to the west from that, it's right off of Route 10 as you're going towards Tucson. That, and it's also Indian land down there. It's reservation land. That has canyons through it too. I think that's where she's talking about. And I was going to try to do some investigating down there a couple years ago, and just got too busy with, the cryptozoology
right.
to get it done. But every time we drove down to Tombstone and to Bisbee to do our events down there, we would talk about it as, in the group, that we think right in there is where they're coming from. And that mountain range would be directly in line with the missile silos that we saw. So, yes, I think she's right. And if I have the location right, I think she's 100% right.
Gotcha.
And I have seen what's called the superstition light. And those are basically just orbs that kind of hang out on the south side of the Superstition Mountain. And you can see them from the highways, Phoenix proper.
Might have been it. Out of the chat room at Inception, there's a question for you, Alex. Carol says, does Alex believe there is a direct connect between UFOs, alien intelligence, and Bigfoot? What's your thoughts?
I hate to say definitely yes, because then people go, oh, he's a wacko. But we have just had so many sightings and events coincide that we think that there possibly is, and I want to tread lightly here because, I try to claim to be very scientific and realistic compared to some of the other researchers. But, yes, I think that is a very, very good possibility. I've actually had multiples come out of the Black Canyon area where Travis had his event. And, mysteriously now, the road that he would have drove down going back towards town, was an old stagecoach lodge on that. And the name escapes me right now. But it was a stop on the stagecoach as the stagecoach headed towards Young, Arizona. And, I'm not saying for sure this is anything, but, a very high-level politician from New Mexico owns that stagecoach stop, and he's made it a really upscale ranch. And it's 10 miles from any other building, except for a couple of houses that are on the road heading towards Black Canyon Lake. And so it's just very, very out of place. And the fact that it's visited or owned by high-level politicians from the next state just has me thinking that, something's up there.
Interesting, very interesting. The cryptozoology field, Alex, it kind of comes and goes in stages. This year, of course, it seemed like I was doing a little bit of following this guy. I think it's Dreyer, the guy that supposedly shot and was killed one and was hauling it all over the country. Did that end up just turning out to be a complete joke?
That is Rick Dyer, and we don't mind pronouncing his name correctly. He is the same person that hoaxed Tom Biscardi back in 2008, and basically what he did is people told him he couldn't do it again, so he did it again. And he's recently done an interview with my friends over at KPHO CBS 5 and admitted to them that it, was all just a dare. Could he do it again? And he did. So this one, went a little bit further than the other one. He had the body made up, and he's recently even said who made the body for him. I was listening to some of his YouTube videos just the other day. He mentions the name of the person that made the body. And then he jokingly says, we'll come out with the real body in January of 2015. But he's just playing with people. He's a modern-day P.T. Barnum. Same as Tom Biscardi. They're showmen. And once you realize what they're doing, I think it's kind of okay. The world, needs those kind of people. Because they're just exactly that. They're showmen. They're out to make a buck, but they're out to entertain people. What's really, hiccups here. What I find hard to fathom is these people that claim to be researchers and just either don't know what they're doing or they're just totally misleading. That really gets me, and I get to be a little outspoken, calling out different people. I think I saw on your list of guests that you've had Steve Culls on, and he does the same thing. We just dislike when we get a person that claims to be a researcher and is really, a hoaxer or a faker or just trying to make money. And I don't know why this person keeps calling me. I've told everyone not to call me, but this one person keeps calling. But, I think what's worse for the genre, for the field of study, is these people that claim to be real researchers, real scientists. You know, if you don't mind me saying, like, for instance, the big DNA study that just completed, not the one that I was involved with a year and a half ago, the Melba Ketchum genome study. This new one was out of Oxford with one of the finer geneticists in the whole world, Brian Sykes, a Bigfoot agency from California called Footology, and they had 36 samples, and all 36 of them came out to be known critters. They actually had 2 samples from Arizona. Don't know who gave it to them. They weren't from me. And one was a bighorn sheep, and one was a raccoon. You know, and I posted on the website, on the Facebook page for K-Talk and Fringe Radio. You know, you don't have to do DNA on hair to figure out that it's from a normal critter. The FBI actually has an identification page, and I actually posted the link to that page on the K-Talk Facebook page and the Fringe Radio Facebook page, because it just got my goat so bad. You know, they really, basically, if you think about it, they ruined their own reputation. They have no reputation whatsoever now, because they took hairs that were supposedly vested by different levels of researchers. And my understanding is this, that the hairs came from researchers in and around the United States. We're just talking about the United States, North American hairs, because some of them came from India and Russia. But the ones coming through the North America came from researchers, guys like me, obviously guys that, you know, all I can say is these came from the people that think every little thing they come across in the woods is Bigfoot, and that's just not the way it is. They didn't check them out themselves. There's multiple websites where you can check what you have against known hairs. Henner Fahrenbach has a website. Henner is a great guy. He'll answer your email. He'll send you, you know, copies of what is bear hair, what is, you know, raccoon hair. He's got them all cataloged. There's the FBI site that I put on the website. I think that is, you know, it's from the forensic lab. And, you know, the FBI will use these hairs in determining different murder locations and such like that. You know, is it a criminal tear, or is it an animal tear? So they have a whole catalog of these hairs. So a simple $45 microscope, and you can look at what you found and compare it to the FBI website, to the Henner Fahrenbach website, and you know, okay, the researchers failed to do this. They sent them off to this big organization, or so-called big organization, Bigfootology, run by a professor. I won't say his name. And he was supposed to vet these samples. And then there's some question of whether he sent them to another location in Oregon, private game and fish type location, that was supposed to also test them out to make sure they were, you know, unknown hairs.
Right.
And then they were all sent to the UK, to Oxford, to Brian Sykes, where he did DNA on them. And 35 out of 36 hairs came out as normal creatures from the area they were found. One hair came out to be human. And, you know, normally I would say, well, that's very good. That's what Bigfoot hair is supposed to be. And he only did mtDNA, that's the mitochondrial, brought down from the mother's side. And in Bigfoot hair, Bigfoot DNA, the mitochondrial side looks completely human. According to Dr. Ketchum, this is because there was human interaction. I think she says 12,000 years ago. So and she found that out doing the nuclear DNA testing, which Brian Sykes didn't do. But, in this case, I would have to say that one hair is probably not Bigfoot hair. It's probably a real human, 35 to 1 chance, I guess, that it's probably contamination from the human that discovered it or something to that effect. And I don't mean to pick on these other groups, but I think the proof is in the pudding, and they've done this to themselves. They did not contact me about testing the toenail, and the toenail is certainly not from a normal critter. It may be from a human, but it's certainly not from a bear or a deer, an elk. And, they actually did contact me, and then they made up some excuse because the toenail has now been cleaned by Melba. She scraped all the matter off the toenail. She did mtDNA to the fullest. She did nuclear DNA as far as she could at the time. She did not complete the genome on the toenail, and that's a little above me. I don't quite know what that means. She did nuclear testing. She did mitochondrial testing, but she didn't complete the genome like she did on 3, for example. And, they only contacted me to test the toenail after the psych study was completed. So they said, we'll be glad to test it for you, but it will not be part of the study. And then when they saw a picture of it, they said, oh, no, that's been bleached. Melba Ketchum bleached that on you. And, I immediately called up Melba. She's a great friend of mine. I spent hours on the phone with her last weekend. And she said, no, I did not bleach that toenail. It's just been scraped. And you know what it looks like now? It looks like your fingernails or toenails when you get out of the shower. It's just nice and clean. But it's not bleached, white. It doesn't look like it came from something with albinism. So I think right off the bat that my experience working with them one-on-one was not very, at least I wasn't satisfied. And I think the study's completion shows that, they were nothing but a bunch of incompetence. It's a shame. It's a shame that people like that are in this field because it makes us all look bad. And, they're much worse than Rick Dyer because, Rick Dyer, in the end, he laughs and says, oh, I was just playing with you, to prove I could do it. These people are pretending to be real scientists and real researchers. That is 100% worse.
Well, it's amazing, Alex, the amount of time that some of these people spend on I shouldn't say hoaxing, but wasting their time. I mean, you fear they could put the effort towards something else. I don't know if they're just trying to get into the community. And I know you've mentioned it, and other guests we've had on. I can be honest with you, I haven't had a lot of cryptozoologists on, but I've had a handful, and it's amazing how many of them are out there running around trying to be something maybe they're not.
Right.
And it just discredits the whole community, like anything. When you've got people trying to or claiming to be experts, and I know that in talking to you and some others like Jeff Hilling and some of these other people who are out there trying to find something, you get a lot of them that just discredit it because the guys that are trying to, like yourself, that are trying to really capture the picture or capture the evidence, all it does is it makes a mockery of the whole science of it.
Yeah, you'll notice that I don't have, a picture for every trip I've taken to the woods of Bigfoot. In all my time, we basically have gotten one thermal that I think is probably the best thermal image of the creature we call Bigfoot. And with my partner, and I had I might have helped him put up that camera. But basically, my partner, who it would make a great guest sometime, and I use the term loosely because I haven't been out with him this year, but Mitch Wade, the Arizona cryptozoologist / Bigfoot researcher, has an incredible photo. What happens, he puts a lot of cameras up, and at any different given time, he'll have 10, 13 cameras out there. And they all get played with. And what we do is we try to climb high up in the tree. He has a couple of the telephone worker type spikes. And when I'm with him, I'll do it for him, at least before my back injury. And we'll screw them into the tree, and we'll put the camera up 14 feet high, or 13 feet high. Still, these cameras get played with. And he's got one photo. It looks like the creature was grabbing the camera, and the camera went off and took a close-up of the creature's face. And it's one of the most amazing photos of a Bigfoot face that you'll ever find. We don't know for sure that it's Bigfoot, of course. We say that correctly every time. There was a big camera glare, so Mitch had to enhance the photo a little bit to bring out the details. But basically what it looks like is the face of something kind of a cross between a human and maybe from Planet of the Apes. And,
wow.
It's, and I'm guessing within 6 to 12 inches from the camera. So the whole picture is just the face. And that's an amazing photograph. If you want to go to movieonmonster.com, you'll see it. He uses it for some of his books and stuff. And he'd make a great guest, too, by the way. The best photo I have, and technically I didn't take that, but one of my group members did, was a thermal image of Bigfoot, and I posted that on both the Fringe website and the K-Talk Facebook page, And that one was from 2008, November 2008.
Mm-hmm.
I had my sighting that year, and we can talk about that if you like.
Sure.
But a couple of guys begged me to take them up there. They had this piece of equipment. I'm a family man. I mentioned that I have 6 children. It was 3 days before Thanksgiving, and, Mitch and I did not want to go. But finally, the other 3 guys begged me because one of them thought this camera was basically a large thermal flare unit, the kind that looks through the homes. And it was actually from the type that real estate uses or the Border Patrol uses to look through a home. And the person that was with me was a high-level Border Patrol agent, a homicide detective from here in Phoenix, and then one of my researchers and videographers. And the researcher and videographer stayed in camp. We had one of the guys brought his wife and daughter, so he stayed in camp with the wife and daughter, and the other 3 of us went down the road. We were very near the peak at the Workman's Mountain, Aztec Peak, and we started playing with this camera, and in 20, 30 minutes we locked onto something incredibly huge. And that's 6 times that person called me. I think they'd get the hint. We locked onto something huge. We watched it for 20 minutes. We're not pro kill or anything like that, so we weren't going to disturb it per se. I threw a couple of rocks at it, and it moved. And the guys that were with me got pretty pissed off because, you know, even though we were well protected, just they didn't want this thing charging us. And later, after analyzing the photo, and your viewers and listeners can try to take a look at this for themselves, we couldn't understand why this creature didn't just haul, you know what, away from us. And later what we found is that in the lower right-hand corner of the area that we were covering, looks like there's possibly a smaller one that was hunkered down in the bushes. So we have this big, huge one, which we later determined to possibly be 8 or 9 feet. There's a comparison video on the link where the guys the next day went to that area and, you know, stood where the creature would have been. But it wasn't leaving because we think there was a couple of small ones, or at least one small one, hunkered down in the bushes. So actually, I guess we're pretty lucky that it didn't charge us when I did throw those rocks, because, you know, the worst thing in nature is to aggravate a mother and her cubs, or a wild creature and its babies. You know, you don't want to get in between them. And thank God we didn't do that. We didn't go into the bushes, but, you know, we did try to disturb it. And, you know, you could sort of tell the way it was handling itself. It was just totally kind of not understanding how we could tell it was there.
Right.
You know, we think they know about the infrared lights on the trail cams, but they, at least this creature, didn't yet know about the thermal imaging type cam. And it thought it was hiding. This camera was so powerful that this was 11 o'clock at night, I believe. It was 26 degrees. There would be no heat coming off the trees at that time of year. But this camera was so powerful that the creature was reflecting and refracting off the trees behind it. And those trees are probably 30, 40 feet from where the creature was. So if any of your listeners are going on the Fringe page and looking for that, that kind of sets it up for them. And if they watch the comparison video the next day, they'll see it all quite clearly. I think there's about 6 or 8 photos. They're basically all of the same photos with different exposure, and well, 2 or 3 different photos with different exposure, you know, so 6 or 8 of them, and then the comparison video. That was one of the most interesting times I've had in the woods. I wouldn't say the scariest, because in August of that year, I was very near this location, about a mile away, at a ranch called Murphy's Ranch. And I had set up camp after dark. I was setting up some food, had a couple of sausages going and some peppers. And that's my big thing. Usually on the night, the first night at camp, I'll cook up some sausages and peppers.
Get the natives stirred up.
Exactly, you know, because that really permeates through the air. The peppers, the meat, the pork, it just is really strong. And I guess it worked. It's worked numerous times, but this one time I was by myself and had my vehicle with me. I had my Coleman stove grill on top of a couple of those Rubbermaid bins, and I'm cooking away. Just as I finished the 2 sausages and I got them in one hand and a couple of beverages in the other hand, I heard this, and I was at a trailhead right before this ranch. The ranch has a a bolted gate at the trailhead. So technically not supposed to camp there, but, you know, there was nobody else there. The rangers weren't around. I know them. They'd still chastise me because they do what's right. But I figured I was safe, you know, to one night park in the trailhead and camp there. And this scream came from the dark woods and brush and thicket just on the other side of my truck. I would say it was what everybody now calls a bobo yell, but it was worse than that. It was a vibrating scream, an ungodly scream.